everybody? Mark, aka the Nerdy Punk, back again tonight for a new video. I hope you all are doing really well. We are into the final month of 2020, or 2021, actually. I'm a year behind. And I thought I would go ahead and resurrect a series that I was doing earlier on the channel, in which I went through my film diary for every month and every movie that I watched that month. I am kind of rebranding the series a little bit. I haven't done it for the last couple of months, and I'm going to be calling this series potentially from now on as my Letterboxd recap for the month. And so this is my Letterboxd recap of November 2021. If you don't know Letterboxd, it's basically social media, but just for like film and film reviews and, talking about films and that kind of thing. I use Letterboxd regularly. I will go ahead and link my Letterboxd profile down below, so if you want to keep up with me and what I'm watching on a daily basis, you can go ahead and check out that profile and give me a follow or whatever. I'm really not trying to build up that social media profile or anything, but if you want to keep up to date with what I'm watching, go ahead and do that. All right, let's get into the movies for November 2021. Alright, the first movie for November 2021 is Crash, directed by David Cronenberg. Now, this was the very beginning of the month, and at the beginning of the month, I went on kind of a mini Cronenberg binge. For a couple days there, I watched a couple Cronenberg movies. I didn't watch nearly as much this month. I only watched 6 films in total. There were a couple films that I started and never really finished, but 6 films that I actually completed. Crash, I really enjoyed. It is probably my third or second favorite Cronenberg film at the time. I obviously haven't seen all of his work. I've seen several of his movies. And it's such an interesting film in that the performances are very distant. You don't really feel a ton of emotional connection with the film, but it explores such a unique subject matter. And I really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was such a unique film. I enjoyed the performances, even though there wasn't a lot of room for emotional connection. I had a very positive opinion overall on the film. If I had to give it a grade, I believe I gave it a 4 out of 5. So, Crash was movie number 1 for the month. Next film was also a David Cronenberg movie, also in the Criterion Collection. I have the Criterion releases for these movies. My next one was The Brood from 1975, I believe. Again, one of my favorite Cronenberg movies. I have not been disappointed by Cronenberg in the slightest. I love this movie, fantastic family drama. David Cronenberg himself was going through a divorce at the time, and so there's a lot of kind of his personal life that he's put in to this film. And I really enjoy kind of that aspect of the movie, and it's one of the better movies about divorce, even though it's not directly about divorce, that I've ever seen. Fantastic horror. I love the body horror elements. I love the creatures that he created. The scene towards the end with the wife and the thing that is revealed, I'm not going to spoil it, that was just incredible. Absolutely incredible and horrifying, and I adore this movie. This is one I highly recommend, The Brood from David Cronenberg. Alright, next film I watched was actually my first trip to the theater of November, and I went to see the new Wes Anderson film, The French Dispatch, towards the middle of the month. I haven't seen tons of Wes Anderson's movies. He's heavily featured in the Criterion Collection, and I have a couple of his movies that are in there. But other than The French Dispatch, I know I've seen Isle of Dogs, and I think I may have seen another one. This is not considered to be Wes Anderson's best, but it's certainly a solid movie, and I think even a film that's not Wes Anderson's best is still an incredibly good movie. I had, an interesting opinion on this. I was thrown off a bit by the storytelling. It's such a unique way of telling a story. It's kind of like an anthology movie. It really feels like you are experiencing an issue of the New Yorker or something. This publication, the French Dispatch that Wes Anderson has created, is very similar, very inspired by the New Yorker and publications like that. And I read the New Yorker for probably over a year. I was a subscriber to that magazine, and it really felt like you were watching it in film form. And it was so unique. The problem with all anthologies is that some stories are better than others, and I think that definitely came into play here. Some of the main stories were better than others and more interesting than others, and so I feel like the film did kind of lag a bit on the stories that were less interesting. But there was an incredible cast to this movie. You had Frances McDormand, you had Bill Murray, you had Timothy Chalamet, you had so many others. Owen Wilson. I actually really enjoyed Owen Wilson's part in this movie. That was one of my favorite parts of the film. Benicio del Toro and Léa Seydoux, who Léa Seydoux also played Madeline Swan in the most recent Bond film. So Léa Seydoux has had a couple major movies this year. Their portion of the film I thought was great. Obviously, it's Wes Anderson, so it's heavily stylized. The film looked gorgeous. So I had a pretty good time with the French Dispatch. I believe I gave it a 4 out of 5. Definitely a solid movie, a contender for one of my top 10 of the year. Film number 4 for the month was The Damned, another Criterion Collection release. This is one that I picked up in the Criterion Collection sale for November of 2021. This film came out from Criterion in September, originally released in 1969. This is my first film from Luchino Visconti, who's a very famous Italian filmmaker, or was. Of course, he has passed on, rest in peace. But either way, this film, it was one that the plot very much intrigued me. And so after hearing about the film, I felt like it was a must-buy. And I really enjoyed this one. I found it to be very interesting. It wasn't really what I expected. It covers a lot of very depraved stuff. There's a lot of very difficult content, perhaps, to digest in the film. But it's also kind of like a family drama. It reminds me a lot of, I haven't seen it, but from what I've heard about, like a show like Succession, that's very popular, reminds me a lot of that. It's like a family drama in which you have people kind of jostling for control of this company within this very wealthy family. And it kind of makes a really good statement about, obviously there's a lot of Nazi subject matter in this, with this being set in Nazi Germany. And so there's a lot of talk about fascism, and so it makes a good kind of comment on that. It also makes a good comment about the quest for power, money, greed. I really did enjoy this one. I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. So I definitely recommend The Damned if you're able to check it out whenever the next Criterion sale kind of comes around. If you haven't picked it up yet, I definitely recommend picking up the Criterion version of The Damned. Next film that I watched was House of Gucci, which was my second and final trip to the movies of November 2021. Very happy I was able to see this in the theater. This is a film by Ridley Scott, his second of the year. I did not get a chance to see his first, which was The Last Duel. I want to see that, just didn't get around to it when it came out. However, I did enjoy House of Gucci, but it certainly had its flaws, and the flaws were pretty obvious. I made a full review of this movie, so if you're interested in my in-depth thoughts, go check out that review. But overall, I had a mixed opinion on the film. Really loved some of the performances, also hated some of the performances. So Jared Leto, I was not a fan of in this movie. Adam Driver and Lady Gaga, I was absolutely a fan of. I gave this film a 3.5 out of 5. I think it's a decent movie. I definitely don't think it's a Best Picture. Some people were kind of talking about that with the Oscars coming up. I do not think that at all. But I think it's a decent movie. I think could have been great. Didn't quite live up to its potential. But still an enjoyable time. So House of Gucci If you get the chance to see it in theaters, I'd recommend it, but it's not one that I would go out of my way to go see. All right, last film that I watched. I actually watched it last night, the last day of November, November 30th, and that is The Humans from A24, which is one of my favorite film companies and studios, as well as they did a partnership with Showtime to release this movie. This was absolutely fantastic. I loved this movie. It's probably my favorite film that I've seen this year so far. Great performance from Richard Jenkins. Um, I forget one of the other lead actresses that plays Richard Jenkins' wife. She was fantastic. Now, this originated as a Broadway play, and the guy who directed the play and created the play also directed the film. And it really offered a unique kind of perspective to it. And Jane Howdyshell, I believe, is the name of the actress. It just came to me. She was amazing in this movie. There was also Stephen Yeun, who really didn't have a lot to do in the movie, but was fantastic in what he did. You also had Amy Schumer, who surprised me with a pretty good performance. This film is... I like to think of it as kind of like a horror movie that's not a horror movie. Some people are kind of building this up as a horror. It's absolutely not a traditional horror, but the stuff that goes on is very horrific and horrifying. And it's mostly, again, a family drama. It's set at Thanksgiving. You have Richard Jenkins going to visit his daughter and her new boyfriend in their apartment in Chinatown in New York City. And they're from Pennsylvania, they're kind of from the country, and so they're kind of with this culture shock into New York City, but it's mostly set in this rundown apartment in Chinatown. And the apartment itself becomes a character within the movie. And it is fantastic. There are some horror elements that do arrive towards the end of the film, but it's mostly about the horror that comes with dysfunctional families. And I found it incredibly relatable. I can understand how some people would see it as kind of like a slow movie. It is a slow burn, and you really have to invest in these characters. But the dialogue is incredible. Performances are incredible. I loved the direction. The director, every shot seemed meticulous. Like he specifically chose how to frame every single shot, and it's strangely framed. You get very few close-ups at all on the main actors. I absolutely loved this movie, and highly recommend The Humans from A24. So that's it. That's what I watched for November of 2021. Go ahead and leave me in the comments down below. If you've seen any of these films, leave me your thoughts on them and what was your favorite out of what I've seen. And let me know what you guys watched this month. Stay tuned for these videos. Hope to make one for December. I also hope to make a couple videos talking about the Oscars in the first couple months of 2022. I'm trying to see as many of the Best Picture and Best Acting nominated movies of the year. So I definitely want to do a little bit of Oscar content this year as well. Hope you all have a great night. Talk to you later. Bye.